A test of wills. The CIA takes charge from the military in interrogating Saddam. The latest tonight on how the grilling's going. On the streets of Iraq, Saddam's supporters clashed violently with U.S. troops. Is this just the beginning of a backlash? Strom Thurmond and the secret this woman kept about him for 8 decades. I'll have portions of an exclusive interview with her in tonight's Inside Story. And these factory workers were called in to see the boss and got the surprise of their lives.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather reporting from CBS News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. With Saddam Hussein in custody, U.S. forces are now stepping up the hunt for the new most wanted fugitive in Iraq, the man apparently calling most of the shots in the ongoing guerrilla war. We'll have more about that in a moment. But first, a new team of U.S. interrogators is trying to get as much information out of Saddam as possible. So far, he is not cooperating. CBS's Jim Stewart reports what the deposed dictator is and is not saying.
He may have been captured by the 4th Infantry Division, but it is the CIA now overseeing Saddam Hussein's interrogation, and both sides seem ready for a major test of wills. CIA Director George Tenet was officially handed over the duties today by Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld.
He and his people will be the regulator over the interrogations, who will do it, the questions that'll get posed.
Thus far, Hussein's not answering many questions at all. After initially denying the existence of weapons of mass destruction or intimate knowledge of the attacks on coalition forces by party loyalists, he has now adopted a defiant stance. He's being a jerk, said one official familiar with the interrogations. He thinks he's still the president of Iraq. As for demeanor, Hussein is dressed in a GI-issued white Arabic-style robe with a blue jacket, according to one official who's seen him. He is not in handcuffs or restraints and has few requests. Conscious that Hussein will likely have a public trial someday, officials say the dictator is being treated well, but not deferentially. The chief tactic appears to be stress and sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation, one official pointedly observed, is within the rules. Also, no decision has been made yet whether to allow Iraqi interrogators to be present, and although Hussein has shown a decent command of English, the interrogation is all in Arabic. The practical effect of putting the CIA in charge is to make his interrogation more like the ones done on Al-Qaeda leaders Ramzi bin al-Shibh and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, only whereas they disappeared to some undisclosed secure location, officials confirm Hussein will almost certainly be kept in Iraq to face justice. The strategy for the questioning will be simple, one official suggested. Ask early, ask often, and let no one rest until you get the answers. Dan?
Jim Stewart reporting live from our Washington Bureau. Thanks. The capture of Saddam, the ace of spades in that widely publicized deck of most wanted Iraqis, makes his former top lieutenant the king of clubs, now the top priority for American forces on the hunt in Iraq. CBS's David Martin reports U.S. commanders believe nabbing him will do more to stop attacks on U.S. forces than the capture of Saddam did.
Documents captured along with Saddam Hussein show he was in contact with Itzat Ibrahim al-Duri, his former number 2 man, now believed to be directing the resistance. That makes al-Duri the most wanted man in Iraq. Saddam has told his interrogators he did not play a direct role in the attacks, and U.S. intelligence analysts believe that's true, since he had no communications equipment with him when he was captured, although that $750,000 might well have been used to finance the insurgency.
U.S. officials had hoped Saddam's capture would convince those around him to turn themselves in. But that hasn't happened yet, and attacks against coalition forces continue at the same level as before.
In Tikrit, a roadside bomb wounded 3 American soldiers on patrol. Some of the attacks, like the ambush of an American column in Samara, appeared to be well planned, and officials said it must have been in the works before Saddam was captured. The plan didn't work, however, and 11 of the attackers were killed. U.S. troops remain on the offensive, pulling in nearly 80 suspected insurgents on a raid in Tikrit. But if American soldiers think Saddam's capture means they're going home anytime soon, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, on a surprise visit to Iraq, made it clear they would be there for the foreseeable future.
And about as far as we're looking is through the next couple of years. And beyond that, I don't think we can make any judgments.
The capture of Saddam is a major success, but it is also a lesson in the difficulties that lie ahead. American troops never would have found that hole without a tip, and they probably won't find al-Duri without a tip. Even something as big and immovable as jet fighters buried in the desert wasn't discovered until wind blew the sand away. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Saddam's capture appears to be helping President Bush's campaign to get some of Iraq's huge foreign debt erased. The president's special envoy, former Secretary of State James Baker, met in Paris with French President Chirac and in Berlin with German Chancellor Schroeder. Both opposed the U.S.-led war, but agreed today there should be, quote, substantial debt reduction for Iraq. The capture of Saddam has also changed U.S. public opinion about Iraq and President Bush. In a CBS News New York Times poll out tonight, 65% of Americans say U.S. efforts to bring stability to Iraq are going well. 47% thought so before Saddam's capture. You may want to note, though, that only 1 in 4 Americans believes there will be fewer attacks on U.S. troops now. As for President Bush, his job approval rating has gone up 6 points since the capture of Saddam. It now stands at 58% in our poll. Even though Saddam Hussein was found cowering in a hole in the ground with weapons, even though he gave up without a fight, the former dictator still has many supporters, especially among Iraq's Sunni Islamic Arabs. And today, throughout Saddam's home region, CBS's Kimberly Dozier reports there were angry, often violent protests.
The tyrant has fallen, but for some, he's a fallen hero. His followers cannot accept their leader is gone and their supremacy in Iraq truly ended. They vented their anger on U.S. troops and other symbols of the coalition. Overnight in Ramadi, the Americans opened fire on this crowd. Several protesters were killed. But the protests have been confined to the Sunni Triangle, towns like Fallujah, Baquba, and Tikrit, where allegiance to clan bound the people to Saddam and won them his favor. In the rest of the country, there is mostly a sigh of relief. But even many who suffered under Saddam have mixed feelings. His fall has brought American occupation and an uncertain future. And also a measure of shame. Few can fathom that the man who terrified them for so long now seems so small, and none can quite grasp that he went without a fight. He should have killed himself and at least one American soldier, this man says. Iraqis are much like abused children, scarred by the man who was both father figure and enforcer. His rules were simple. Obey and he would provide jobs, food rations, electricity, and security. Rebel and punishment was merciless. But Saddam Hussein also gave Iraqis dignity and pride. He became a symbol of defiance across the Arab world, never backing down from a fight. He spent half his time in power at war with neighboring countries, even taking on the United States, not once, but twice. Those who loved him and those who hated him still can't separate the man from the country in their minds. For many, his humiliation is their own. Kimberly Dozier, CBS News, Baghdad.
Of course, many Iraqis in many parts of the country rejoiced at Saddam's capture. CBS's Thalia Shuras found one such Iraqi in Baghdad, a man with the courage to make his feelings clear in dramatic fashion months ago when the Iraqi capital fell.
Jawad Kadim has been seen all over the world, but not like this. Like this, on April 9th when coalition forces took Baghdad. Shouting, "This is freedom," he beat a poster of Saddam Hussein with the sole of his sandal. There is no greater insult in the Arab world. This is the first time Jawad Kadim has returned to the spot since that day.
Why? Why did you do that?
Because he destroyed us and destroyed our people, destroyed everything, he says. When I hit Saddam's picture, it was as if I was hitting Saddam himself. He claims he's been offered thousands of dollars for the sandal, which his wife keeps hidden for safekeeping. But he says it belongs to the Iraqi people and should perhaps be kept in a museum. Saddam loyalists threatened his family over this spontaneous act 9 months ago. But he is optimistic, now that Saddam is in U.S. custody. The time of terror is gone, he says. The future will be good, he says. Iraq will no longer have mass graves. There will be no torture. Jawad Kadim is a street vendor. He's been earning only enough to keep food on the table and is forced to live with his wife and 8 children in this squalid 2-room hut by the side of a busy highway. But his delirious act of defiance has not been forgotten. A group of Iraqi Americans has invited him to visit the United States. If he comes, he'll bring along his sandal, a symbol of a man and a people liberated from the tyranny of Saddam. Thalia Ashuras, CBS News, Baghdad.
Coming up next on the CBS Evening News, she is the offspring of a secret relationship in a divided, segregated society. Now, Strom Thurmond's secret daughter breaks her silence. I'll have part of our exclusive 60 Minutes 2 interview in tonight's Inside Story. And then later, this woman died after taking the abortion drug RU-486. What went wrong, and is the drug really safe? This past weekend, a 78-year-old retired California teacher went public with the news that she is the illegitimate biracial daughter of the late Senator Strom Thurmond, a one-time, long-time segregationist. More recently, the Thurmond family has confirmed it. Her mother was a maid for the Thurmond family, the woman says, and I spoke today with Thurmond's daughter about her feelings, her father, and the country in an exclusive interview for 60 Minutes 2. It is tonight's Inside Story. Essie Mae Washington Williams met her father for the first time when she was 16. Did you love him as a father?
I liked him very much. I was not around him, remember. I only saw him about once a year. So I didn't feel that close relationship that you normally would with a parent. But I knew that he cared about me, and he was very good to me. And I would not have done anything to hurt him.
Do you think he loved you?
Yes. I think he cared about me. Otherwise, I don't think he would have done the things that he did if he didn't care about me.
What Strom Thurmond did was pay for her college tuition and give her cash every year, taking care of his black daughter at the same time he was making his political career as a radical segregationist.
There's not enough troops in the Army to force the Southern people to break down segregation and admit the Negro race into our theaters, into our swimming pools, into our homes, and into our churches.
Throughout his life, Thurmond deflected rumors he had a child, even claiming to be a first-time father at the age of 68. During his long Senate career, he lobbied hard, quote, against civil rights legislation, later switching to somewhat more moderate positions. All the while, his daughter kept his secret. But you stayed silent.
Well, yes, because it wasn't to my advantage to talk about anything that he had done. We didn't have any agreement about not talking about it. We just didn't talk about it, either one of us.
Williams says she's coming forward now at age 78 for her children's sake, so they'll know their history.
See, for 50, I would say 50 or 60 years now, this thing has been following me. So the fact that I am coming out now to talk about it is like a burden lifted, because I had this secret.
You can see and hear much more of that interview on 60 Minutes 2 tomorrow night at 8, 7 Central Time, here on CBS. The latest figures from the CBS Market Watch point to a U.S. economy picking up steam with low inflation. Take a look. Consumer prices fell in November. Inflation is running just 1.8% this year, down from 2.4% last year. Home construction rose in November to its highest level in nearly 2 years, and U.S. industry overall posted the biggest gain in production in 4 years. Wall Street was pleased. The Dow gave a triple-digit show of appreciation. Next on the CBS Evening News, his daughter died after taking the abortion drug RU-486. How it happened and what her family is trying to do about it when we come back. Scientific advisors recommended today that the U.S. government allow women to get the so-called morning after pill without a prescription. That's the emergency contraceptive taken soon after sex. The Food and Drug Administration will make the final official decision. The FDA says this morning after pill is safe, but critics question whether it would be safe for women to take it without medical supervision. That question of safety without supervision is also at the heart of a fierce new debate involving another women's pill, the so-called abortion pill, which can be taken much later. It's not a morning after pill. And that debate is being fueled by the death of one young woman who used this pill. CBS's Sandra Hughes has been investigating.
18-year-old Holly Patterson's father was still in shock when he buried her, just days after he was called to a Northern California emergency room.
The doctor came in and basically explained to me that this is a complication of the pill, and I thought, well, what kind of pill? Birth control pill? And he said, no, the abortion pill.
Holly never told her parents she'd taken the abortion pill RU-486. The coroner says her death was caused by infection after a drug-induced abortion. The case has inflamed both sides in the abortion debate and turned Holly's parents into crusaders against RU-486.
What we're concerned about is the health and welfare of young women and our teenagers, our daughters.
RU-486 is the first pill in a two-step procedure to end a pregnancy under 2 months. It causes abortion. A day or so later, a second different pill causes contractions that are supposed to complete the process. Holly took RU-486 at this Planned Parenthood clinic and got the second pill to take at home. Days later, she went to the ER with bleeding and cramping and was given painkillers. She died a few days after that. California health officials and the FDA are investigating. Abortion opponents say this proves the drug regimen is dangerous, pointing out the FDA said the second pill should also be taken under supervision at a clinic.
The second drug in the RU-486 regimen causes the woman's cervix to open. At that point, bacteria can enter in. That can cause an infection.
But researchers who've studied both drugs say they've been used safely by 200,000 women in the U.S. And Planned Parenthood doesn't follow FDA recommendations because so much more clinical evidence has now been collected.
These evidence-based studies really show that these alternative approaches are safe and effective.
Now, anti-abortion legislators have introduced what they call Holly's Law to suspend FDA approval pending investigation.
RU-486 kills babies, and sometimes it kills their mother.
There are anti-choice extremists in Washington, politicians whose goal is to make all abortion illegal.
Holly's parents say this isn't about abortion rights, pro or con, but about drugs they consider deadly.
We'll never see her grow up to be a beautiful woman and see her children, and
We lost our future.
we did.
Sandra Hughes, CBS News, Fremont, California.
From a story that's important to one that's just interesting, security cameras in this day and age capture all sorts of things, and the most unusual we've seen recently is the deer that wandered into a metro station in Washington, D.C. It took the escalator down, scampered along the platform, and sauntered outside by way of the track while commuters watched in wonderment. Next year on the CBS Evening News, Christmas comes early for workers at this factory. The shoemakers get a surprise in their stockings. We'll tell you all about it in a moment. This is, of course, the holiday season, the season of surprises. So we end the broadcast tonight with a holiday surprise from Pittsfield, Maine, where CBS's Jim Acosta found a story with a very happy ending.
After a long week at this northern Maine shoe factory, the plant manager assembled all 200 workers last Friday for an important announcement.
Well, it kind of went through my head. This is it. We're closing.
But instead of pink slips, it was something unheard of in American factories. That plant manager for SAS Shoemakers came bearing checks.
Well, he started out, everybody was going to get $1,000 for Christmas bonus.
And then he paused for a little bit, and then he said that it would be $1,000 for every year of service.
Husband and wife Buddy and Carol Washburn have both worked for the company for almost 19 years. Together, they're bringing a cool $37 grand home for the holidays.
So we're going to be able to get a home out in the country now.
That's more than their combined annual salaries. The workers were so overwhelmed, some of them needed rides home.
I think they were more in shock at first, and then it all set in, and then the tears started flowing and just didn't stop.
For Lori Reynolds, it's a lifeline, a way to get her family out of debt.
And I saw the checks in my dreams all night long.
Along with each check came one of these letters explaining the company's old-fashioned principles, saving money for a rainy day and taking care of family. Add to that, modesty. The company wouldn't talk about all of this on camera, letting the gifts speak for themselves.
It is hard to talk about because it's just so unreal. Super. It makes a big difference.
A big difference from an old-fashioned shoe company with a soul that has the Christmas spirit all sewn up. Jim Acosta, CBS News, Pittsfield, Maine.
$1,000 for each year each employee worked there. Part of our world tonight. Dan Rather reporting for the CBS Evening News. Good night.
For news 24 hours a day, click on cbsnews.com. Brought to you in part by Walmart. Giving, helping, doing. Because we live here too, and we believe good works. The trouble with a well-known asthma medicine. We'll investigate tomorrow. Experience CBS News.